Guten Morgen, meine Damen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. At an unusual time of day, the Federal Chancellor. Ladies and gentlemen, today's European Council met in two different formats, and I think it's fair to say that this is a historic council and that today has been a historic day, triggering a mix of feeling, because on the one hand, it is tragic that Great Britain is withdrawing from the European Union after 25 years. But of course, we have to respect the decision and the vote taken by the British people. And it is against that background good that we have been able to agree on a political declaration for the future relationship between the European Union and the United Kingdom, and a withdrawal agreement today. From the perspective of the EU 27, thus, we believe that there is a basis for an orderly separation and for negotiating the future relationship. The political declaration sets out an ambitious framework, the objective being a very close partnership for a third country. We have or aim at an intensity of relationship that has not been there before, and the guidelines that we, the 27, have set ourselves for the negotiations with the United Kingdom on the withdrawal and the framework for the future relationship is fully complied with. I would like to thank especially Michel Barnier and Jean-Claude Juncker and Donald Tusk, but of course, I'd also like to thank the whole team. I want to express my gratitude and my pleasure at the fact that the cooperation of the 27 has been excellent, as has been the cooperation with the Commission and the Parliament. For we all have the duty, the Council and the Parliament, to shape this process together. Michel Barnier and Jean-Claude Juncker have done an excellent job here, but we have also, and I think that played a part in it, come to realize that we can only be strong if we defend our interests together. Thus, this has been a very good experience. We, the 27 member states, at an early point in time, once the British people had expressed its decision, decided in favor of shaping the approach of the European Union as a broad one. I remind you of the Declaration of Bratislava, where we have been making major headway in shaping PESCO and the efforts in the field of defense and foreign policy, improving the euro area, the eurozone, the developments in the field of establishing a banking union and finding tax regulations for digital companies. These are all regulations and efforts underway that are a clear expression of the fact that the European Union is willing to tackle the challenges of the future and thus to continue to be an important player on the international scene. The fact that the withdrawal agreement regulates important matters in our eyes. The Germans or EU citizens that live in Great Britain, their rights have been safeguarded, also in the field of social security. This agreement is in the interest, is in our financial interest. It contains a guarantee that there is not going to be a hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, and we have enough time and also the opportunity to even take a little longer if we want to focus on shaping future relations and to focus on this in greater detail. It is, in my eyes, very important that we have been striving for a balance of rights and duties. The integrity of the single market with its four freedoms has always been important to us. The autonomy of the European Union in the field of decision-making has been maintained, and the objective of setting up an ambitious free trade zone has been important to us. Cooperation in the field of customs and tariffs, whilst we have been stressing the fact that such agreements will not be making completely superfluous any border checks or controls. The area of fisheries is undoubtedly going to be an area where negotiations will be tough. We will undoubtedly have to negotiate further, but we strive for close cooperation and also very close cooperation in the field of internal security. These are important aspects. As Theresa May herself said, we continue to live in a European area even once or after Great Britain has left the European Union. Thus, there is still a lot that needs to be done, a lot of work for us. The House of Commons will now be seized of the draft agreement. But I think this has been really a very successful endeavor in a difficult situation without precedents. Never before have we been in a situation where a member wanted to leave the European Union. We have been successful enough in this attempt of reaching an agreement that balances the interests of both sides, paying respect or paying heed to the interests of both sides, allowing at the same time for a close partnership. And all of that took place in a spirit that implied tough negotiations, while never losing sight of the fact that we could only work for a win-win situation for both sides. Thus, as I said, my feelings are divided. I feel very sad, but also I feel a certain sense of relief that we've been able to achieve what we have achieved. Mrs. Pop, Valentna Pop, Wall Street Journal. Madam Chancellor, have you already been thinking about what is going to happen once the House of Commons rejects the deal? Would you then be ready to begin new negotiations, or how will you respond? You know, these are speculations, and it's very difficult to respond. We are focusing on making this a success, although the situation is very difficult and has been very difficult. I also believe that the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, is going to do whatever is in her power to make her part, to do her bit, and this is what we intend to focus on. We want to see that that endeavor ends successfully. The gentleman behind you. Madam Chancellor, are you ready, or do you believe that there's anything you could do in order to provide further support to Great Britain in order to make the matter a success? Do you think that Europe can do anything to help, or is it a matter of the United Kingdom? One shouldn't do anything one hasn't been asked for in advance. If I'm running the risk of repeating a question that has already been asked, do you see any leeway for further negotiations should that prove necessary? Should there be a negative vote in the House of Commons? And the second question, if I may, has anybody approached you and asked you about the possibility, or expressed his or her concern about you stepping down as Federal Chancellor ahead of the end of the term? I've been approached by members of the EPP, but as for the rest, it has not been subject of discussions. And I think the first question that you asked, I've already responded to that. The gentleman over there in row number 1.
Of the Italian newspaper La Stampa. I have a question that is not related to Brexit, but is related to Italy. I just want to know if in the margin of this summit, do you have the occasion to talk with the Italian Prime Minister Conte about the Italian budget, because he arrived this morning here at the council with a dossier to explain the Italian budget. And so I want to know if you discuss, if you are supporting the steps that the European Commission is taking in the context of the excessive deficit procedure, and what do you expect for the Italian government? Thank you.
I talked, but very briefly, with my colleague Giuseppe Conte. I asked him to brief me about the talks he had yesterday with the President of the Commission and the representatives of the Commission. I very much welcome the fact that these talks have taken place. We place our trust fully in the Commission. We're grateful for any exchange of views that the Italian side is having with the Commission, and we hope for a good outcome, of course, understandably, of the negotiations. Herr Leifert, ZDF. Madam Chancellor, Negotiations about the future relationship are to begin soon. Is that the most ambitious part of the negotiations, would you say so? And what conditions will have to be complied with, will have to be fulfilled? Well, in our political statement, we have described what we are aiming for. It's quite a long text, actually quite precise, outlining the expectations each and every side has. And I think that provides an excellent framework for the future relationship. I don't know whether these negotiations are going to prove more difficult, if I may say that in inverted commas. The genuine withdrawal negotiations have become more complicated in the case of the United Kingdom due to the fact that there is that special relationship between Ireland and Northern Ireland. And that, of course, is also going to once again play a part in the upcoming negotiations on the future relationship with the United Kingdom. But the negotiations have already been difficult, and I think the ongoing and the future negotiations will be very much functioning along the principle where there's a will, there is a way. This tragic, this sad situation contains a seed of something positive, and that is that we have put behind us a good stretch of the difficult path, and that should imbue us with a sense of confidence and the strength we need to also make the rest a success. The final question, DPA. Madam Chancellor, you already spoke of the close relationship that you're aiming for. Can you call this a Brexit at all? Is this a genuine separation, a genuine divorce for both sides? And thus, has it paid off for the British? Of course it is a separation. I mentioned that we are aiming for a relationship, that what we will be having in future is relations between the European Union and a third state. A relationship, I grant you that is going to be much closer than any kind of relationship we have had so far with any third country. But dispute settlement, the way this is going to be settled will be seen in the future. Freedom of movement, of course, we will have to pay a price for that, border checks and controls. So the proof of the pudding is going to be in the negotiations of the financial perspective. We will no longer be pursuing a single agriculture policy. The situation will thus be changed with regard to the fisheries sector. So it is a separation, but the citizens affected, the British, that is, the EU citizens in Great Britain, for all of them, we want to make it as smooth as possible. Also with regard to internal and external security, we intend to cooperate there very closely indeed, have a close relationship there. The economic development of the 27, but also the economic development of Great Britain, we are aiming to achieve the best possible solution, but always following the principle and based on the realization that we're talking about a relationship between the EU and a third country. Thank you, and a pleasant Sunday. Our contribution was to not run behind schedule.
Ja, nicht?